Welcome to the Ketones and Coffee Podcast with Lawrence Manaig, where we explore the ketogenic lifestyle and how it can improve your physical and mental health. Each week, we bring you valuable insights and advice from experts to help you on your journey to a healthier lifestyle. This episode is brought to you by BasicKetogenicLifestyle.com, where Lawrence coaches individuals with depression to reverse their symptoms and achieve a healthier, happier life using an evidence-based approach. So sit back, relax, and join us as we dive deep into the world of ketones and coffee. Subscribe to the Ketones and Coffee Podcast today and never miss an episode.
I'm so excited for this, guys. Stick around because I am so honored. This is a special episode, and this is with Dr. Anna Andreazza. She is a professor at the University of Toronto in the departments of Pharmacology and Toxicology and Psychiatry, holding a Canada Research Chair in molecular pharmacology of mood disorders. She is also the scientific director of Mitochondrial Innovation Initiative, or Mito2I. She has published over 150 research articles and over 9,000 citations. Dr. Andreazza is a prominent figure in the field of mitochondrial research, particularly in relation to mental illnesses such as mood disorders. Her research focuses on understanding the impact of mitochondrial function or on neurotransmission, with a specific emphasis on mood disorders to improve patients' lives. Dr. Anna, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me here. It is such a pleasure. I have a blast every time I hear your podcast, and makes me really, really happy to have this opportunity to be here today talking about my passion, mitochondria, and why we actually should care in the field of mental health, and especially for those interested in ketogenic diet.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why we're here. We want to talk about those topics, very important topics. And I couldn't cover all of your achievements. Otherwise, I'll be out of breath before the show even started.
That's very kind of you.
Yeah, Dr. Anna, I want to express my gratitude for you being here, joining us today, because it's just an honor to have an opportunity to speak with someone who, strives to improve patients' lives. This topic is about, we're about to discuss this. I talked about it earlier. You do it by finding the right strategies, finding the right diagnoses. You have this passion for exploring the connection between mood disorders and mitochondrial health. Gives a lot of people hope, right? Just knowing that there is someone, experts like you, working tirelessly to shed light on these topics, to improve lives of patients. I love it. So thank you so much. Before we dive into the research on mitochondria, I would love to know more about your backstory a little bit. So what made you interested in the field of work?
Well, it's a long story, and I hope I will keep short for you, but it's actually interesting. I actually find that it's motivating for those that are actually trying to enter in science and starting a career in helping patients to improve their quality of life. Sure. So I was very passionate about discovering things since a very young age. I think I drove my parents a little bit crazy because I would ask to them, how does this made it? Why should I not eat this? Why you don't want me to go there? Why? Mm-hmm. And I knew it that my path in life would be something about discovery. And I didn't know as a younger adult what would be that path. I entered biology school because I was curious about biology. And shortly my second year of biology became to discover that I love to learn about the body, how it functions, why we do certain diagnoses, why do people have to do this blood test to actually get to understand better the disease. And biology was not enough for me, and medicine was not the path that I would like to go, because for me, dealing with disease was very hard. But I would like to help patients from a different angle. So I decided to go to pharmacy school, which gave me an incredible opportunity to learn about two things I'm very passionate: what the body is about, how the biochemistry, happens in the body, and how can I achieve novel treatments to help to improve those pathways in the body that we actually are dysfunctional and we need a better treatment for them. So on my first year pharmacy school, I joined a laboratory in the south of Brazil, where I'm originally from, to study a compound called resveratrol. You might know this compound that is present in wine or grapes. If you drink grape juice or wine, you are drinking resveratrol. And back in the day, we were very curious about what is this compound and what it does to our cells in the body. We knew it going in that it was an antioxidant. And I actually made a mistake. I supposed to culture cells that represents your white blood cells. But I took the wrong vial from the freezer, and I actually ended up culturing cells that resemble your neurons, so a neuron-like cells. And I put the cells in the dish. I did the experiment that my supervisor at the time asked me to do it. And I went to show her the data, and she's like, this doesn't look white blood cells. This is looking more like neuronal type like cells. What cells did you use? I said, well, I took this virus that said SA25YA. And she's like, oh, those are neuron-like cells, but this is interesting. So that's how we started my connection, actually, to start working and understand the pathways of antioxidant redox modulations in the brain. It was actually a mistake that led me to understand oxidative stress, mitochondria in the brain. At that time, really, really long time ago, let's leave it like that, it was not a field that psychiatry would actually touch. It was only 5 of us around the world that was studying.
Wow.
It was our group in south of Brazil with Professor Flavio Kapczynski, which then became my mentor for life and during my master and PhD. Michael Burke in Australia, Tadafumi Kato in Japan, Hakesh, I forgot his surname, Salemi in Turkey, and another person, Kim Do in Sweden. And that was it. There was no one else in the world actually studying the role of mitochondria, role of oxidative stress in psychiatry. And I'm very honored to see how the field has incredibly speed up in these 20 years of now becoming a field that we are here on a podcast talking about mitochondria, energy, and brain, and how can we use nutraceutical approaches, therapies that are well within your diet and your control to modulate your energy metabolism, to enhance your mental health. And so that's my story. That's how it started. That's how I built it in the field. And I'm happy to tell more a little bit of what is mitochondria, how we study, but let's go with the flow of your podcast.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing your story. If not for that mistake that happened, who knows what could have happened, but it led you to this direction where you're now helping this side of health to progress, right? It's still a ground roots movement, right? But it is moving in the right direction. A lot of it thanks to you and the other scientists that the Bazuki family also, they provide resources for these studies that there's really great work happening behind the scenes right now. This which is truly inspiring. I want to know what inspired you to get into the mental health side of things, our brain health.
Yeah, so when we start back in the 90s to understand more how the role of antioxidants. So let me back it up a little bit so everybody's on the same page. So those that are hearing understand what an antioxidant is. So if you actually think about an iron bar that is exposed to air, it will oxidize, correct? Over the time, it will form these rusty things. And why it form these rusty things is because you actually have oxygen that touch the molecules and oxidize these molecules. Our body go into normal process of oxidation. We oxidize our lipids, our DNA, and our molecules. That's a normal process. It happens every day in our body. But when it's accumulating too much, that becomes problematic. And that's what we call oxidative stress. How oxidative stress is formed is from the mitochondria. If you think about the mitochondria, it's like the furnace of your house. You want the mitochondria to be functioning really properly within your cells. You don't want the furnace of your house being broken in the winter and you cannot have enough heat in your home. And you also don't want the furnace broken to not provide the AC that you needed on the cooling in the summer. So that control of temperature that the furnace produces in your house is what our mitochondria does for our cells. It's producing enough energy that let our cells, all the cells in our body, with exception of the red blood cells, to actually produce enough energy to all the metabolism that is necessary. The brain is extremely energetic. It takes all this process of energy to be able to control a lot of this neurotransmission, how we cognitive, how I'm talking with you right now, moving my fingers, walking, all of this costs energy for our brain. And the brain needs a mitochondria functioning properly. So when we started in the 90s to study the role of antioxidants. So now what are antioxidants? Antioxidants are those that enter your cells, molecules like the fruit, the phytochemicals, all the things that you're eating that actually produce these antioxidant molecules that can take out the reactive oxygen species, those that oxidize it, your DNA, your proteins, your lipids in the body, to maintain a balance, which calls oxidative stress balance. You want a little bit of oxidation, but you don't want a lot of oxidation. That's what the antioxidants on your cells are trying to do. So that's how I entered in mental health. I was really trying to understand how antioxidants, it would help your brain to maintain this balance and not have injured through the process of oxidative stress. The disease that actually made a lot of sense for us to study this was bipolar disorder. Because if you think about bipolar disorder and depression for that matter, it's a process where you have high states of energy with hyperaccessibility, with called mania, when you have this energetic state. You're producing a lot. You're getting out of the bed. You're doing a lot of things. Your processing thought is very speed up. But then you have the opposite of that state as well, which is depression, where you most of the time are not able to function as you wish your body will be functioning. So it made sense biologically and scientifically to study that. Then there is another side of the story. I was fascinated about the world of how stigmatized mental health was.
Yes.
And I suffered that on my own family and my own personal life. So seeing people that desperately need the help and to talk about their own symptoms, and they couldn't get out of the shelf because of this difficulty that it's the brain, it's mental, it's not there. And since that time when I started, I become to use much more the words of brain health instead of mental health, because it's my belief that if we understand biological processes that are involved on this, we will help to break stigma around psychiatric diseases. So that's my passion, is really finding the biological pathways that one, we can understand the disease, we can put correct names. Should we maybe say energetic pathways dysfunction instead say bipolar disorder? What is the biological pathways that are actually driven this? Can we break this stigmatization and call our brain as it is? It's a brain health, it's a brain disease. So let's help our patients to embrace. And don't forget, when we say ketogenic diet or when we say nutritional approach, nutritional supplements, those are actually therapies that should be treated as such, because they are changing the biology of your body. So
Yes.
we actually are helping our body to stay healthy by taking those therapeutical approaches. So the way that I see is we can decide to take a route of saying is it's not a drug, but in my point of view, everything you put it in your body is potential a drug. So we needed to be able to look into our nutritional approach as an approach that is valid, is scientifically proven, and we needed to have more and more discovery. And I'm very thankful for many of the foundations, the Bazuki Foundation, to actually had strived and pushed this field forward with now the metabolic mind and many other resources around the world that are pushing this forward. So
Yeah.
that's my passion. Let's break stigma
Yeah.
through biology. Let's bring diagnosis to patients, and let's treat nutraceutical and therapeutic approaches as they are.
I love that. The fact that you said brain health instead of mental health just takes a lot of the blame out of that person, right? That the person suffering, the individual suffering is already suffering enough, and
Absolutely.
it's worse to have a stigma around that too. It doesn't help the case. So I love that. It just brings the focus on the mechanism of the brain instead of that person having suffering that
You are
disease.
absolutely You are absolutely right, Lorenz, and I love you said that because we don't blame someone to actually have cancer, but we feel
Yes.
blamed if we have depression, and we should not. It's a biological process that is altered chemically in your brain that you needed to actually have help with any approaches that we take into restore the balance chemically. So change the narrative is something that I'm
Yes.
very passionate about, and that's why I
Yes.
think focusing on biology is key.
I love that. I watched your presentation on the metabolic mind, which is, we talked about it as a nonprofit initiative by the Bazuki
Yes,
group, and they
yes.
provide the resources for all the study. What's interesting to me is when you started it with the words "what a dream." What did you mean by that? What a dream.
It is a dream because that day when we went there, I was sitting around in the room with one of the most respected psychiatrists in the world that I look over them for many, many years. And they were there to talk about metabolism. That is a dream. When I studied, I had a poster in one of the main scientific conferences, which was on oxidative stress and bipolar disorder. One person stopped me my poster. One. And that's a dream. That day that I sat in front of that group of so well respected, and they were there to talk about brain, energy, metabolism, and nutraceutical approaches, that is a dream. It is a dream that is actually coming true for
Yeah.
me, and I
Yeah.
feel so honored to actually living the dream and pushing it forward. And being talking to you today, Louise, is another proof of the dream coming true because it's like we are spreading the world, and
Yeah.
the message I think is getting louder and louder and clearer and clearer. So thank you for that.
No, the pleasure's all mine, Dr. Andreazza. And I want to talk about, mitochondria now. Could you please explain to
Yes.
our listeners why mitochondria is so important for our overall health and brain health?
That's great. So let me start to say I'm going to quote Martin Picard, who is a professor at the University of Columbia. I heard him to say this phrase, and I thought it was brilliant. There is no life without mitochondria. And I thought, wow, that is actually very well said because it's true. So mitochondria is an organelle. We say organelle because it's not a cell. It's inside of a cell. So has two membranes and has its own DNA. So mitochondria carries their own DNA, and you carry your nuclear DNA. The mitochondrial DNA comes only from your mom. So the first role of mitochondria that we understand it was actually that carries its own DNA, and you can trace where you come from, generations of generations of generations back. As the field of mitochondria began to grow, which is now about 2 years old, it's not that long a time that we actually start understanding what this organelle does. The first role that we all know about mitochondria is energy production. Energy in our cells is called adenosine triphosphate, ATP for short. ATP is like the coin of your cells to get a chemistry, a reaction going. It's like your money that you need to buy your fruits, your vegetables, your proteins. Is the money of your cells. ATP is necessary to, for example, a heart to beat, a muscle to contract, a neuron to talk to the other neuron, eye to respond to the light. So all these chemical exchange that happen require ATP to happen, the process to happen. That's one of the roles of mitochondria. Mitochondria has many other different roles. It helps, for example, buffer calcium. Calcium is extremely important in your cells. Again, muscle contraction, heart properly pumping the blood, brain to properly process your thoughts. Mitochondria helps to modulate that calcium content. And there are many others effects that mitochondria does, such as producing reactive oxygen species. So when we breathe, we take oxygen, right? And this oxygen enters in our body, and the mitochondria captures the electrons from this oxygen to pass on what we call electron transport chain. So basically, it's taking these electrons and taking them on a roller coaster ride. They go pumping from all this complex until they get to the last complex, which is called complex 5, and it generates the ATP, the energy of your cells. But when this oxygen comes in, you can imagine that the process is not beautifully done all the time. So sometimes it doesn't go through all the complex. So the roller coaster stops sometimes in the complex 3, and that releases electron. And that electron reacts with the oxygen and forms something called reactive oxygen species. Those are free radicals. Those free radicals are known to oxidize the molecules in our body. But they actually do have a very important job. They are signaling molecules. They teach you, especially in your brain, when there is danger, when you need something to happen, when you need certain process for it to happen. So we need a balance. We need a mitochondria that properly can fall, drives through your neurons, get from one side to the other side of your brain, release the ATP, release reactive oxygen species to maintain process flow. So this is extremely important for the brain, but it's not only in the brain. It's important for insulin control. It's important for your heart. It's important for your liver. So when talking about mitochondrial health, we're talking about overall health. We actually need that for your entire body.
Yes.
We don't have an iron bar that kind of separates our brain to our body. We are a whole human being. So your metabolic health on the peripheral health will affect your brain health. Your brain health will affect the metabolic health periphery. It's a completely homeostasis. We are a single body. We need overall health to have brain health. That does make sense for you? Do you think that is explained?
Oh yeah, that is critical. Like you're talking about the various function of of the body, and how the mitochondrial health really affects all of these functions, right? You talked about cell-to-cell communication, hormone production, right? Immune defense,
Exactly.
everything. So understanding that, it will help people understand how it's affecting the brain and our overall health, right? It plays a
Absolutely.
vital role. It plays a
It
vital role.
does. It does, yeah. And I want to ask our listeners if you're curious about these processes. There are many videos that we put it in the YouTube. So if I may, it's in our Mito2i website, mito2i.ca. There's videos there, very simple, that can help you to kind of follow and understand these processes. And I think you mentioned two things that I would like to highlight. You said hormones and immune system. Those are two vital processes in our body, and we're becoming now to understand their role in psychiatric diseases and brain health. So remember that when you don't have a mitochondria healthy, it will impair also the ability of proper production of
Yeah.
hormones. But also, if you have a hormonal dysfunction, you affect your mitochondria. So it becomes this cycle that I think this is what I become more and more passionate over the days, is understanding overall health to improve brain health.
Dr. Adriana, that's really, when I tried to research about you and these topics, I really try to, ask it in a way that, our listeners can understand, because there are, terminologies
Yeah.
here that may be, very difficult for our listeners to understand. But I want to talk about genetics, like, and your mitochondrial research. It was, I saw your presentation. It was incredibly informative, by the way, even for those of us who may not be familiar with all of the scientific terminologies, right? You made it easy to understand. And one common belief is that psychiatric disorders are purely genetically inherited, right? Could you clarify this for our listeners? Is it true that psychiatric disorders are solely determined by genetics, or are there other factors at play?
I would answer that question with a simple no. It's not true. But let me explain why I say that. It's very heterogeneous. So imagine if you have a big cake, right? And this cake cuts 10 pieces. So let's say each of this piece of the cake has a little bit different flavors than each other of the other pieces. That's what is the brain. The brain is a huge heterogeneous organ. It depends on what affected, it will change the disease progression, right? So to say that psychiatric diseases are solely inherited by genetic alterations, I think is a misguidance of our communities. It's absolutely, in my opinion, and I'm sure I have colleagues that will think differently, and I respect that, but in my opinion, is not true. Some of the patients for that will be true. It is a genetic alteration, and that's a type of diseases. Then you have other patients where you actually have metabolic changes that are leading to the behavior alterations. The problem is that we categorize psychiatric disease for the behavior alterations, right? We say depression is X, Y, and Z, mania is X, Y, and Z, but all those are behavioral alterations. If we look into the biological or the genetic alterations, and we had categorized those via biology or genetics, they probably would not even be called the same disease, because they have different roots of origin. So that's why I think no, it is not true to say that it's all genetics. There are other processes that alter it. Is all mitochondria? No, absolutely not. Can be hormonal, can actually be calcium dysfunction, can be many other pathways, sleep, My goodness, so many dysfunction now that we are learning about sleep dysfunction that leads to be core of some of our patients. In my view, we needed to actually step back, learn the root causes. The root causes will lead you to understand the behavioral alterations, and you will then know how to treat properly better. A quick example here is when you are sick with a flu. Do you feel, Lorenzo, getting out of the bed when you have a flu?
No.
No, I don't. I can say I don't. I feel like stay cooking in my bed and eating a warm soup, and I feel depressed. I feel like terrible, like my body is aching. I don't have energy to do anything. I'm fatigued. When I treat the cause, which is the virus, you get out of my system the behavior, which was the sadness, staying in bed, not being able, fatigue, get out as well, and I recover. So that's my hope for the next few years of psychiatry. Can we identify if it is genetic? Well, let's then work with the patients with genetic counseling and organize that. But if it is mitochondria, let's treat them with the mitochondrial inversion therapies that will help them to restore life. If it is inflammatory, let's treat the inflammatory roots. If it is metabolism, let's treat the metabolism. So hopefully we'll be able to slice the pie, identify the right causations for each of the patients, treat each of us individually as we are, and be able to use the term precision psychiatry properly to treat our patients to have a better quality of life, and hopefully less stigmatization and proper conversations with your doctors.
That's the important piece there, right? And just having a right plan for the patient, right? Whether it's mitochondrial dysfunction or genetic, right? Like you said, we have to have the right testing for these individuals, which is our hope, and which is your hope. Yeah.
Absolutely. So then the question that I would pose here is, do we have the tests to do that, right? And the answer is difficult. Some of them will be yes, some of them will be no. But could we start that conversation with our clinicians today? Absolutely yes. So, for example, do we have a way to properly diagnose mitochondrial dysfunction in patients? Yes, we do. If they have genetic inheritance. If they don't have that, it's much more complicated. However, we can learn from the field of mitochondrial rare diseases and be able to take the approach that they take to actually learn to measure functional assessments. Your doctors right today, they can actually access glucose levels, they access metabolism levels, they can access lactate levels. All of this can help to tell you of overall your health of metabolism and mitochondria, how it is. We don't yet have a proper diagnosis, and that's something that my lab personally works very hard to try to bring that to light. But that doesn't mean that the doctors cannot start looking biologically in every patient today to have that proper conversation with the patients. CRP, which is C-reactive protein, an inflammatory marker, should we be measuring in our patients, help them to understand whether there is any inflammatory roots. So a good conversation, an open-minded conversation with your clinician can help you to start finding a better treatment and hopefully taking out from that 15 years to maybe a month to help you find the right treatment.
Exactly.
For you.
How far are we? Like, what specific changes or advancement do you envision in terms of how mitochondrial medicine will impact healthcare? What are you envisioning?
Wow. Now we can take another hour here. So, well, that's the reason why I founded Mitochondria. So the Mitochondrial Innovation Initiative actually was created via a mother that connected with me after she learned about my research in mitochondria and bipolar disorder. Her story is she has a son with bipolar disorder and 2 kids with a rare mitochondrial disease. And she asked me a very simple question: how these 2 diseases are related? And I said at that time, I don't have a good answer for you. And she said, well, how can we study this? And said, well, would you like to work with me? So we start working with her family, and it became clear and clear, Lorenzo, that we needed better diagnosis, and we need a group of professionals that will be actually working together to understand a very complex problem. So we put together a fundraising that brought together over 70 patients, and I'm very proud to say that funded the initial money for creation of Mitochondria, and my University of Toronto matched these funds, which I'm very grateful for. The goal of Mitochondria is absolutely we don't look into disease. We look into the mitochondria, we look into metabolism, and we bring clinicians, patients, families, researchers, and students all working together with a single goal: transform how mitochondrial health is perceived in our society. We want to bring this to everyday medicine.
Yes.
How we need to do that? We need the proper diagnostics, right? That's the first thing we need to understand. To have proper diagnostics, we need people that are working from engineering, from medicine, from pharmacy, from nutraceuticals, from basic science, to clinicians, to understand the biology, how to target the biology, how to measure, and how to effectively treat that alteration in the biology. How far are we, to answer your question? There are some advances that are coming quite soon. I'm not yet in liberty of talking of them. No, I hope this will be just starting in Toronto, but it will be something that we can easily spread the word. And as soon as I have the permission of showing the data, I will certainly send it to you, and feel free to please share with all your listeners. But the Bazuki has put a lot of funding towards this, and diagnostics, I think, is coming into a point where in the next 1 or 2 years we'll be able to implement that in our clinics, and we can have better guidelines.
That's
Treatments.
Hopeful.
It is hopeful. I am hopeful. I'm always hopeful. But no, it's true. In the next, I think, 1 to 2 years, we will start seeing some advancements on diagnostics that are hopeful to our community and patients. Whether they will be easy implemented in every clinics, that's a different story, right? We need to educate our healthcare professionals. We need loads of funding to convince politicians and policymakers to help us to change healthcare pathways in the United States, in Europe, in Canada, across the world, to make this to become everyday medicine. But the first step is educating. If we can educate our healthcare professionals of the importance of looking into metabolism, then the next steps will become much easier.
We will definitely push that message, and I will link all the links in the description box below for Mito2I for that initiative, and we'll put everything. If you are a little confused on, there's a lot of terminologies here, you can go on to mito2i.ca and really learn about this stuff, right? And you can do your own research, and you can see that this is a movement that's really going to change, and will give a lot of hope to a lot of people who are sufferers of these mood disorders, as well as just bringing this into light, right? And I love it. Have we missed anything here, Dr. Anna, that we haven't shared?
Yeah, well, let me think. Well, there is one thing that because this is ketones and coffee, right? So I guess I would love to just bring a little bit to light why I think ketosis is such an important
Yes.
topic when talks about mitochondria. So I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a dietitian. I'm not going to talk about what best ketogenic diet is for you because I don't bear that knowledge to best advise you. But what I would like to just finalize this podcast is with a message of what the importance of ketones for our body and why they actually are so important to reverse mitochondria dysfunction. So ketones, when they enter in your body, they actually are a source of energy. So the patients with mood disorders and either bipolar or depression or schizophrenia, many other different psychiatric diseases, including autism, others, they have this high energy demand on your body, right? The brain has already this high capacity of energy. But when we suffer of alterations on the brain, on mitochondria, it puts our brain to even request more energy. So when you give ketones to the body, when you enhance it, ketogenesis, and you're producing your BHB, your acetoacetate, all your ketones, you're providing your cells, you're providing mitochondria with another way to produce energy. You're providing your cells another way to produce antioxidants. So you're restoring balance of energy metabolism via ketosis. And that's an important message because I think everyone needs to try to read more, including myself. We all need to learn more about this process and help to understand how can we target this system to improve brain health. So that's a key now in my research, and I hope the next few years we will have much better answers on how can we improve that. But to close up, stay healthy, sleep well, hydrate, don't eat sugar, and make sure that your mitochondria is well taken care. And then you can ask me how I take care of my mitochondria, the same way that you take care of your heart. Everything that our doctors always say to keep a healthy heart, exercise, eat well, and ensure your good health. It's ensuring your mitochondria's health. And improve your ketones is always a good thing.
Well, I love that explanation. Thank you so much, Dr. Anna Andreazza, for coming on and sharing your story with us here today. Again, all of the links will be in the description box below, so you guys can check out mito2i.ca for more information about this topic, guys. Dr. Anna, thank you so much for coming on once again.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to speak with you and appreciate your work you do in your podcast.
It's my pleasure. All right, Dr. Andreana, thank you so much. All right, perfect. Let me take a photo real quick. That's great.
Subscribe to the Ketones and Coffee podcast today and never miss an episode.